When you combine materials, like a builder combines bricks with mortar, you create art that stands on its own. Hi, I'm your host, Julie Fei Fan Balzer, and today I'm gonna sew up some fun embellishments that add an artistic touch to lots of projects. So we're actually starting with a kind of unusual material. We're starting with paint rags. I've got lots of these. I use rags instead of paper towels. It's a little more environmentally friendly, and then I have some beautiful art cloth to use. So the next step is I've simply cut two pieces of it into kind of squarish shapes. I've put the sides that I consider the right or correct sides together. Then I'm gonna fold both of those in half, and then just like you did in kindergarten, we're gonna cut half a heart right along that seam. And you can see, you just wanna use a pair of scissors that's really fabric dedicated so that they're gonna just cut right through that fabric, no problem at all. So once that's done and I open it up, you can see I have a perfect heart. So now I'm just gonna pin that together so my layers are together and I don't have to worry when I take it to the sewing machine. The first thing is I'm gonna just slip it under my foot, and I like to start in a kind of straight part, and then I'm gonna lower the presser foot, and then just step on the gas. Now, before I go too far, I wanna take a couple stitches backwards. I wanna back stitch. Because we're gonna turn this, I want it to be very strong in the area where I've done that. Now to go around a curved piece, this is not hard. You just have to keep lifting the presser foot a little bit as you go around the curve of the heart. So I'm just gonna keep stopping and lifting as I go. The good news is you can use any thread when you're sewing something like this because all of our stitching is gonna be on the inside of our heart, not on the outside. So generally speaking, I tend to keep a fairly neutral thread in my sewing machine, so I don't have to worry too much if like a seam should pull. I like to use grays, browns, all those kinds of things, sometimes white, you know, just an easy color that kind of goes with anything. Now, when you get down to the cleavage of the heart, just make sure to make a sharp turn and then bring that stitching right on up again. The good news is because this is a hand cut thing, it doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to do anything fancy. I just keep lifting and turning. And now you can see, of course, why we have pinned the layers together, because we wanna make sure that everything stays in place. Now, I also wanna point out something that's really, really important, which is you wanna make sure to leave a gap when you get to the end of your stitching. And the reason for this is because we're gonna turn it, like I said, and so there needs to be a way to turn it. And trust me, I've done it wrong before where I've accidentally not left that gap, and then you have to cut it open, which isn't much fun. So I'm gonna stop, go in reverse, go ahead and cut the thread, lift my foot, and here you go. There you go. So you can see I've got this gap here. So all I need to do now is take out the pins, and then I'm gonna bring it over to the other table and turn it. So to turn this, I simply stick my thumb in, and then I'm just grabbing and pulling at the fabric to push it through the hole. So obviously, you wanna leave a big enough hole that you can get it through, but not so big a hole because we have to hand stitch this closed that you're just, you know, stuck with it. So you just kind of wiggle it around a bunch of times until it feels right. And I have one here that's already done. Now, if you want, you can take a tool and kind of smooth out the edges, but I kind of find that happens when you stuff it. So I was told by a doll maker that the best way to stuff things is actually in small bits, because my impulse was to try to cram as much filling in there as I could. But she said that you get a better, fluffier, nicer, firmer thing if you do it in little balls. So I just keep taking off small pieces and just cramming them in there. And you'll notice that I start in the farthest place from the hole, and you can even use a tool to really just shove it in there and make sure that it's rounding everything out. Now, once that's all stuffed, you're gonna end up with something that should be very, very, very firm to the touch. And you can see that I've already started to close the gap that we left open. So to close it, this is not a hard stitch, and I do it a little bit Frankenstein-y. I'm sure, you know, there are doll makers who are rolling over, they're so upset, but you know, I like functional, and this is a paint rag, so I'm not that worried about my stitches showing. It's just a quick overhand suture, shall we say, of getting it together. And I wanna show you the way that I knot, because I think it's kind of clever and it works really, really well. So I go slightly past the stitched area just to make sure that's totally secure. Then what I do is I create a loop, and I'm gonna go through twice in the same direction. So once through the loop, okay? And then I'm gonna go a second time in the same direction, and then I pull, and my knot ends up right at the bottom, and then I can just bury the thread by going through to another part, pulling taut, and then cutting that off. So easy enough. But I want to embellish this heart a little bit more. So you can see the one that I have here, I've just painted it, and you can do that with a brush. But I thought, why not get cool and let's stamp it? So I'm gonna go ahead and make my own stamp. So in my electronic cutter, I just need to pick a pattern, and I'm feeling kind of floral, so I thought I would do a flower. And then I just need to resize it because I want kind of an itty bitty flower here. You could also add text or anything else that you wanted. So once I've picked the size of my flower, then I simply say, okay. And now it's time to put my silicone stamp material onto my mat. So I want to pull off 1/2 of the plastic that's on there. I want to leave the other half on there because this keeps the silicone from stretching when you're cutting, and that's important. So I'm just gonna smooth it on to my mat and then load the mat into the machine. And then I wanna make sure to drag my flower a little bit away from the edge. I'm gonna hit OK and cut. And then we're just gonna very quickly and easily cut that out. Now, stamping on fabric is really easy to do. You don't need to use any particular special kind of paint, and the reason for that is because this is not something that's gonna be worn. Any acrylic paint is gonna stay on your fabric. These are for pieces that are really for the wall. So I'm just going ahead and grabbing this, and I can see that my deep cut blade did a great job cutting through this thick material. So all I need to do is remove the plastic. That was the other half of plastic that was still on there. Honestly, this is the toughest part of this entire process. And once that's done, I can simply mount it onto my block because of course silicone is gonna stick. I'm gonna put out a little bit of paint onto a pallet, take a brayer and roll through it. Then just simply apply it onto my stamp, okay? And then in no time at all, I will be ready to stamp onto my heart. And you wanna rock that stamp a little bit because this is a curved surface, okay? And you can see I have my flower right there. So if we look over at the finished pieces, you'll see that it's super easy and fun to make your own stitched mixed media embellishment for whatever it is that you're making.